Hello, everyone. And we're live. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Oh my goodness, I already see a couple of people in chat. Hi, everyone. Hi, Ryaning. Welcome, Ryaning. First time here, they say. Glad to have you, Ryaning. And apparently, Ryaning just found us 3 days ago. That's cool. I hope you've been having a great time going through our channel, Ryan. It's so happy to have you here. And thank you so much for joining us today for what I assume is going to be your first live then. So I hope you have a great time. Hi, General Banana. Apparently, it's also General Banana's first time. Hello from Germany. And even if your English is not so good, um, we're gonna have a good time, okay? Don't worry about it. All right. If you have anything that you're confused about or you want to ask for clarification or whatever, then feel free to ask. All right. This is a judgment free zone. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'll do my best to answer as many of your questions as possible within the time that we have today, of course. But yeah, hi everyone. Hello again. Mitsuki. If I'm not mistaken, Mitsuki, like you've joined a live of ours before, if I'm remembering correctly. Again, I'm not so sure. But yes, hello Mitsuki from Nigeria. Hello, Arrow Shogun. Who else? How about everyone else? How's everyone else doing? Where are you guys tuning in from? And what time is it over there? It's morning where I'm at. So good morning, everyone. How about everyone else? Hi, everyone. Hi, Shogun. Been super busy working on my manga script. That's cool. It's always nice to hear and check in with our subscribers to see how far along they are with their mangas, So it's really cool to hear. Shogun. Who else? Uh, All right. So Zuma, 3 a.m. from Cyprus. Hi, Zuma. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for joining us at 3 a.m. I'm glad you found the time and I'm glad you're still up. So I hope you take it easy, okay? If you feel tired, then don't make me keep you, right? Sharks, it's 8 p.m. for Sharks. Hi, Sharks. Retro Ghost, it's 5 p.m. for Retro Ghost. Hi, Retro Ghost. Midnight in Nigeria. Oh my goodness. From for everyone who's joining us from Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us so late. Just Rooney, hello from Puerto Rico. Always seeing these live stream notifications. This is my first time watching live. That's awesome. And why did it take you so long? just kidding. But thank you so much, Just Rooney, for joining us for the first time. I'm so glad to see you've taken the time to be here with us today, right? And the whole point that we're here today in the first place, you guys, is to learn about the 7-step manga creation process, right? So if you've spent years struggling to create your own manga, then you're in the right place today. We're here for you, right? And today we're going to learn this 7-step process used by Japanese mangakas in our program specifically. Our mentors use the 7-step process. Our editor knows of this process and has taught us this process, specifically the editing part. So yeah, our editor, as in we have a pro manga editor on staff who's actually worked with major publishers, manga publishers in Japan. So this process is also approved by her as well, right? And I'll be talking about our mentors a bit in a few, but if you guys are here, I have a couple of questions for you, okay? So if you can relate to this, just please type "I'm struggling" in chat, all right? So I've always wanted to create manga, but my art isn't good enough, my story isn't ready, and I don't know how to properly put my ideas on paper. I feel alone and scared that I can't make it. If this is you, just type "I'm struggling" in chat. Or if this is some version of you or you've thought of similar things like this, then just type I'm struggling in chat, right? So, me personally, I've always struggled with feelings of self doubt. Like, I don't think I'm ready for this. I don't think I'm ready to put so much time and effort into a project and have it not pan out the way I want it to. Because because in my, I have had my moments where, oh, I don't want to spend so much time on something I'm not confident will do well, right? And I realized at some point that I'm basically just self sabotaging myself. And I've just been keeping myself from making any progress because I just put myself down right from the get go, right? So this is definitely something that I struggle with. So if you guys struggle with this, let me know. So it's looking at chat now. Sorry, I looked away from chat for a second, but now it seems it's filled with people who say they're struggling. All right, so I get it, right? I really get it, you guys. It's tough being an artist, being a creative, trying to put together these projects in our own free time, because I'm sure most of you are like working, or if you're not working, maybe you're in school, or you have other bigger priorities, bigger responsibilities to take care of, right? And sometimes you just don't have enough time to actually focus on your projects, right? So you're not alone. Okay, everyone's struggling. Just look at everyone else in the chat, right? They're all struggling, and you're not the only one, right? And there are so many fellow aspiring mangakas who are going through the same thing as you. And by the end of this free training, you're going to have an exact roadmap on how to create your first manga. And if you're a beginner serious about creating your own original manga to self publish, join manga contests, and pitch to publishers, then stick around to learn how. All right. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're still struggling, you don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to keep struggling so much, because we've broken down this process for you, right? And this is what we're going to learn today. So these are the 7 steps to create your first manga. So first step is the ideation and planning. Second is writing. Third is visual design. Fourth is storyboarding. Fifth, pencil sketches. Sixth, inking. And seventh, finishing slash shading. All right. So again, we've broken down this process with the help of professionals. Now, we've worked with pro-Japanese mangaka Nao Yazawa and Renesaya, who are both mentors in our program. And Yazawa Sensei, if you guys aren't familiar, Yazawa Sensei is one of is sorry, yeah, I lost my train of thought there, sorry. So Yazawa Sensei is actually a big veteran in the industry. Yazawa Sensei is the creator behind the manga Wedding Peach. So if you're not familiar with Wedding Peach is a magical girl eh, magical girl manga that was released way back in the 90s, and it got adapted into an anime back in the 90s as well. So huge, huge cult classic. As I And Yazawa Sensei as well has released multiple how to draw manga books since then, and is currently teaching at a manga school in Tokyo, just like our mentor Renesaya Sensei, who is also teaching at a manga school in Tokyo and has worked on multiple mangas with the publisher Kado, I think Shogakukan, yeah. And Renesaya has also released multiple how to draw manga books as well. So if you combine their experience, both of them have worked over 50 years in the Japanese manga industry, right? And in that time, they've won contests, they've worked with publishers and self published their own works, right? So these senseis know what they're talking about. And we also have our mentor, who is a pro webtoon artist, Steph Pastrano. Steph Pastrano is really well known for his amazing fan art. He initially started out as a fan artist, and these are just a couple of his fan arts here on screen. And he built quite a following for creating works that seem like their official art. Just look at them. Like, these are awesome, really, legit looking fan art that looked like they actually came from the studio that these series were from, right? So, and also since then, Steph has started working on his own webtoon and is currently releasing his own webtoon right now as well. And last but certainly not the least, we also have our pro manga editor Vivi on staff. Now, Vivi has actually worked with Japanese publishers for the past 10 years now, right? So she's worked on the editorial teams for titles like Record of Ragnarok and Unsung Cinderella. And she's also worked with manga publishers like Kadokawa and Koa Mix. Now, Koa Mix is actually the organizer behind the largest international manga competition around, the Silent Manga Edition. And Kadokawa, her work at Kadokawa, if you aren't familiar, Kadokawa is behind titles like Bungo Stray Dogs and Lucky Star. So, yeah, Vivi is an editor with plenty of experience, and she's really been helping a lot of our students in the program in the past couple of months already. So, with the guidance of these pros, we've helped over 400 beginner mangakas in the last 3 years, and we've seen them transform their manga journeys, right? So I just want to talk about our students for a bit. So our student Raven, right? Our student Raven started out not really knowing how to draw. Like she'd only drawn a bit here and there, but she never made manga before. She'd only ever drawn doodles, never full on illustrations, right? So this is her work back in January 2023, and this is her work at the far right. This is her work from August 2024. Right, from having practically zero drawing experience and never making any sort of manga or having never written anything. She's never written stories before, right? So in just a span of a year, she's improved so much. She's already finished her first one shot, and it took her 4 months to produce her first one shot after learning the basics of drawing first, right? And she's improved so much. And we also have our student Eduardo, who is quite different. Eduardo has more experience because before Eduardo joined us, Eduardo actually knew how to draw already, right? Eduardo had even joined manga contests before joining our program. But the reason why he joined the program in the first place is because he figured he needed to improve his visual storytelling because that was the feedback that he got from previous manga competitions that he joined, that he needed to improve his storytelling. So he joined us, got mentorship from our mentors, and since then he's already released his latest shonen battle manga, Cobra the Kid, on Manga Plus Creators, and is still currently joining more manga contests, right? But he's already improved so much. I mean, here back in June 2024. This was his first storyboard. And after going through a couple of rounds of revisions with our mentors, he ended up with this final manga here on the right. And yeah, he's improved so much, and we're so happy to have him in the program. And we also have our student, Steven. Now, Steven, like Raven, has never drawn before joining the program, right? But he before joining the program, he'd already been developing his original characters. He'd already been dreaming of making manga, but he never had the right skills to actually start making manga by himself. So that's why he joined the program. And after learning the basics from scratch, learning how to draw from scratch, he finally finished his first one shot um, this year, right? And this is just a snippet here on the right. And since then, he's already joined his first competition, the Japan Greece Manga Contest, and is already planning on joining Silent Manga Audition, right? So, given the fact that most of these students have never drawn before and have had zero experience, it's been wonderful seeing how much they've progressed in such a short amount of time, right? So, now we're here to share our insights and knowledge so you can finally create your first manga this 2025. So, are you guys ready? Just type I'm ready in chat if you guys are ready. Uh, I want to get into it, but I want to see if everyone is present, if everyone's with me. I'd like to know. All right. Ride out real quick. Ride out asks, I think I have a fantastic story, but no drawing experience. Do you think it's smarter to start learning to draw myself or find someone else to handle that part? Now, this is what I always say to anyone who's thinking about, who's just starting to consider making their first manga, right? I assume like this is going to be your first manga right out, right? Like you've never made a manga before. So if you've never made a manga before, but you don't know how to draw, then my advice would depend on how you are as a person and how you are as an artist. So if you're the type of artist that picks up on things really quickly, then learning the basics by yourself uh, would be the best way. I mean, that's how most artists start out, just learning by themselves, right? Copying their favorite manga, copying their favorite artists, that sort of thing. That's how most artists start out, right? So if you've never done that before, I do suggest that you do that first, just to see how you are as an artist. Like, what's your temperament? Are you impatient? Are you patient? Are you able to pick up on things quickly? Are you not able to pick up on things quickly? So if you're the sort of person that's impatient and you feel like, oh, I'm doing all of this self learning, but I'm not progressing as fast as I would like, or I'm not getting to where I want to be sooner, then I do suggest that's when that at that point, that's when you start finding support. You try to find professional help, maybe someone to guide you and mentor you through the process. That way, you know, okay, I definitely know what I'm doing because this professional tells me this is what I should do. And I know that what I'm doing is right because I'm learning from a professional who's actually gone through this entire process and succeeded, right? So if you want to get that type of professional help, then that's when I suggest that you try applying to the program, right? Because in our program, you'll get mentorship from professional mangakas, Japanese mangakas, who are currently in Japan and who are currently working in the Japanese industry, right? And you'll get their mentorship, you'll get their help, and you'll know you're getting the right advice because you're getting it from actual professionals, right? So, yeah, that's my answer to that question. So, now you guys settle in and stick around. If you believe you have a unique story to share through your manga, but after years of working on it, you still don't have anything to show, and settle in and stick around if you feel lost and overwhelmed trying to figure this all out by yourself and you feel like you're not moving forward because you don't know where or how to get started, and stick around if you want to find the right mentorship so you can finally publish your manga, join manga contests, and eventually work with publishers. All right. So if this is you, if this is you guys, then I hope you're buckled in. I hope you're settled and you're locked in. But for the rest of you, you guys can leave right now if you simply just want to improve your art and not necessarily make a manga, right? So if you know you're not going to do anything after this manga, after this session, right? Um you can just leave, right? Not to sound harsh, but if you're gonna sit in for the rest of the session, then it has to be for a reason, right? So if you want to learn how to make manga, but not actually make manga after this, then what's the point, right? So it's there's no point in teaching you the whole process if you're not gonna take action and actually learn and actually follow the process, right? So I don't want to waste any more of your time. Right. And you can leave right now if you're only going to listen but don't take action afterwards. Again, I don't want to waste any more of your time. And if you think you can learn and do everything by yourself, right? So if this is the kind of mindset that you have and you feel like, okay, you're picking up on things pretty quickly, you don't feel like you really need help because you feel like you're progressing at the rate that you're comfortable with, then you don't need us, okay? And if you're not willing to commit and make a conscious effort to practice and make time for your manga, right? So you guys, you don't just become a better artist after one day, one week, or even one month, right? Sometimes it takes artists years to actually get to where they want to be, right? So if you want to make manga, you have to invest your time, effort, dedication to truly become a better artist. And if you're not ready to take that time to make that commitment, then you can leave, right? And you can leave right now if you give up easily when things don't go your way. So, guys, we're doing this because we want to make it easier for you, but it's not going to be an easy process, right? This is the process that I'm going to be showing you today might sound simple enough because I'm pretty much going to be summarizing the whole manga making process with you today, right? But the actual work it takes to actually go through that process, it's a very labor intensive process. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot out of you, especially if you're just learning this whole manga making process for the first time, right? So you will struggle along the way, but we want to work with artists that are ready um, to struggle, ready to put in the work, and they're willing to overcome the struggle along the way. All right. So for those of you who are still with me right now, I just want to say congratulations. All right. If you're still with me, congratulations. Just drop the clapping emoji in the chat section. I want to give you guys a pat on the back. If you're still here with me, I mean, if you're choosing to stay with me, that tells me that you're ready to take action and you don't want to stay stuck in the exact same situation, just struggling with drawing or maybe struggling to learn how to tell stories, right? So if you're still here, just drop clapping emojis in chat. I just want to celebrate that, right? So if you're if you said earlier that you've been struggling but you're choosing to stay here with me to watch through the session, then that means that you want to learn, you're willing to learn, and you're eager to make progress, right? So you're choosing to take action, right? So say it loud, say it proud. And yeah, I'm super glad to have you guys join us today. All right. All right, we have a couple of claps in chat. Congratulations, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, for you guys, please stay until the end to learn how you can get personal mentorship from pro Japanese mangakas and a pro manga editor and land an all expense paid trip to Japan to pitch to publishers. Now, before we continue, here's a little info about us and why we're doing this free training in the first place. Now, I want to get into the origin story for this channel, right? We do free trainings every weekend like this. We do workshops. We sometimes do interviews with our students and other professionals in the industry. So, what's the whole point of this channel? Why do we do these free lives, right? Why do we teach aspiring creators for free, essentially? Well, I just want to introduce the owner behind Learn to Draw Manga first. So this is Trisha. Now she's the owner of Learn to Draw Manga and an online art brand called Artillery Philippines. And just like you, she loves anime and manga. And because of that, she came to Japan in 2013 and has been living in Japan ever since. Now, you guys, I'm not Trisha, so I'm just introducing Trisha. I'm Candice. I'm the regular host here on the channel if you're not familiar. So, yeah, if you're wondering why I'm referring to Trisha as if she's not here, that's because she's not here. I'm Candice, right? So, when Trisha came to Japan, she saw so many opportunities for aspiring manga artists in Japan, including the opportunity to learn. Because in Japan, there are actually manga schools that you can study at technical colleges for 2 to 4 years to learn how to draw manga. And when Trisha was younger, she loved anime, manga, and drawing, but there were just no resources to learn how to draw manga anywhere else outside of Japan, really, back in the day. So Trisha could only dream about it. Now, because of that, she thought it was unfair, thinking just because I'm not from Japan, I don't have this opportunity. And even though she was able to make it to Japan, she still couldn't afford to go to these technical colleges, right? So She wanted to make learning how to make manga more accessible and affordable to aspiring manga artists around the world, and that's why Learn to Draw Manga is here today, right? So we at Learn to Draw Manga want to empower each and every one of you. We want to help you go from stuck and struggling to confident and fulfilled by creating your first published one-shot manga. And we want to help you overcome your self doubt and perfectionism by learning the right skills and developing the right mindset so you can prove to yourself that you can do this. Right? Before we officially start the lesson, I just want to let you guys know you can make manga. Right? You might think, oh, but I don't know how to draw. Oh, but I've never written a story before. But I've never really made a manga before, then I'm here to tell you today you can, right? Even if you're starting from zero with absolutely zero experience, everyone can make manga, right? You can make manga. So I just want you guys to sound off in the chat. Just say, I'm ready to make manga, right? So I want you guys to start this session off with words of affirmation, right? We want a positive reinforcement, right? If you're here today, that means you want to make manga, but that doesn't necessarily mean you believe you can make manga, right? So now that we've established that you want to make manga, now I want to make sure you guys believe you can make manga, right? Because that's a very important key note for a lot of beginners. That sets them apart from people who actually succeed, from people who give up um, along the way, right? Because I do know of some artists who started out making manga but gave up along the way because they felt like, oh, this just isn't good enough, right? Or they're just not learning fast enough, right? So before we get into it, I just want to make sure that you guys believe and you um are confident in yourself that you can make manga. All right. So looking at the chat, it seems everyone is ready. Everyone is ready to make manga. All right. So first things first, I want to start this training off with this number one beginner mistake. All right. This is something that every one of you should avoid. And yeah, can you guys guess what this number one beginner mistake is? Sound off in the chat. Leave your guesses in chat. What is this number one beginner mistake that almost everyone makes, and almost every beginner mangaka makes, really? Okay. We have a couple of answers in chat. All right, let me go through these real quick. Not starting. Mm-hmm. Poor paneling. I'll do it tomorrow. So procrastinating. All right. Chasing perfection. No script. Starting too big. Mm-hmm. Push rushing your process. Skipping the storyboard. Drawing without writing the story. Huh. Mm-hmm. What else? What else, you guys? Any more guesses? Not writing before storyboarding, putting the pencil to the page, huh? Um, no clear goal or conflict, thinking too much about everything. All right. So one of you kind of got it right. So it was Retro Ghost. Retro Ghost said starting too big, right? So yeah, pretty much. So the number one mistake is making your first manga too long, too complicated, especially when you have zero experience, right? Most of the applicants to our program, most of them are beginners, right? And a lot of them had already been developing their manga stories like for years, like since they were in school, in maybe like in high school maybe, or middle school. And since then they've just had those stories sitting in their heads, and they just came back to it every now and then over the years. And because of that, it's just gotten super long and super complicated, super convoluted. And yeah, Or there have been other artists as well who've made multiple stories and have had so many ideas over the years, but they've gotten distracted just jumping from story to story because they could never settle on one that they actually wanted to finish from start to end, right? So yeah. um Let me guess. For those of you in chat, right? I think like some of this you guys can pretty much relate to. So maybe you've been developing your story for years or even decades with multiple characters, a lot of story building, lore, power systems, and just making it too complex. Like One Piece level complex, maybe, right? Just sound off in chat if this is something that you relate to, right? And maybe you feel like you have to create your magnum opus with 50, 60, 70, or even more chapters. And maybe you started on multiple stories and don't even have a single one out and finished, right? Is this you? Just let me know in chat. Does this hit too close to home? Is this something that you guys have experienced or that you guys did as well when you first started out? Just let me know. Like type I'm guilty in chat. If you're guilty of any of this, just type I'm guilty in chat, right? So a reality check for those of you who are guilty of this, right? You need to focus. So how do we focus? How do we focus and actually finish your first manga? So that leads me to my next question for you guys. What's the ideal number of chapters for a beginner mangaka? Drop your answers in the comments. All right. Let me know what are your guesses? Like what's the ideal number of chapters for a beginner? Like chapter is different from a volume. Okay, you guys, you might be confusing that with a volume. A volume is a collection of multiple chapters. A chapter is just one chapter. All right. So, what is the ideal number of chapters for a beginner who's never made manga before? All right. A lot of people are guilty and a lot of people are putting in their answers now. Okay, I see ones, I see five. Uh-huh. I see two, I see three, five chapters. Okay. Seven chapters. All right, you guys, the ones who answered one are correct. Just one single chapter, right? You have to learn how to make a one shot. A one shot is one single chapter, and a chapter can be composed of multiple pages, right? And we'll get into how many pages your first chapter should be, your first one shot should be, right? So why one chapter, right? Why a one shot? Now, a lot of pro mangakas get a breakthrough manga contests, right? And you know what most, if not all manga contests require? A one shot, right? So there's also publishers, right? A lot of publishers also commission just one chapter until they get reader survey results. And once the results come in, that's when popular one shots that actually pass the survey results get a serialization, right? So manga is kind of like a TV series in that sense, that one pilot episode equals to one season, right? Or no, one pilot episode or one season. Like maybe a show gets one season as a sort of like test, and if the first season passes and it gets rave reviews, then it gets more seasons. It gets greenlit for more seasons in that sense, right? So if it's not popular enough, if your manga isn't popular enough, if your one shot isn't popular enough, then it's not, the likelihood of that getting a series is zero, basically, right? So most popular manga had pilot chapters. Pilot chapters, these are original one shots. Like a lot of the series that you know and love started out as one shots. Now, the Naruto pilot was a one shot, the Dragon Ball pilot was a one shot, the Attack on Titan pilot was a one shot, right? And had their pilot one shots not been popular, then none of these series would exist today, right? So Naruto, Dragon Ball, Attack on Titan wouldn't exist if their pilot one shots didn't succeed. Okay? So if the one shot is popular enough, you go and work with an editor to refine your art and story, and then that opens doors to a serialization. Okay? So, my piece of advice for you is do not obsess over the details of your one shot, right? I know so many of you here want to have an actual manga series, and once your one shot is approved for a serialization, that's when you work with an editor to improve the details. So when you're first starting out, you don't have to dwell too much on every single tiny minute detail about your manga, because you're just the purpose of your one shot is to try to make as good of a story, as compelling of a story as possible that readers would love to read and want to read more about, right? So, if you look at Naruto, right, the Naruto pilot is so different from the actual series and what it ended up being, right? I mean, the character design for Naruto was a bit different, and in the Naruto pilot, people were actually using guns, right? Ninjas using guns, right? So if you could imagine Naruto with all of these ninjas fighting it out with guns, like John Wick style, then kind of crazy, right? I mean, a lot of things changed from the pilot, but the whole purpose of the pilot is to try to make as interesting of a story as possible, right? And that leads us to Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan is so different once you compare the pilot chapter and even earlier chapters of the series once it did get serialized to the latest and the last chapters of Attack on Titan, right? The art is so different. And in the pilot, none of the characters in the Attack on Titan pilot are actually in the series. None of them ended up in the series. Eren wasn't in the pilot. Levi wasn't in the pilot. Mikasa, Armin. None of the characters in the series are in the pilot chapter. Actually, the pilot chapter um, actually follows an entirely different character, but it's set in the same world, right? It started out pretty much the same way the beginning of Attack on Titan started out, but even after the pilot got greenlit for a series and an editor took interest in the pilot, it went through so many revisions, so many changes, right? And your art, your story, your characters will improve once you're up for serialization. So don't aim for perfection now, right? So the whole point of talking about all these pilot chapters is to let you know that almost 90% of the time, the one shot, the first manga that you ever make, if you ever do want to publish it with legit publishers, um whether or not they're from Japan or maybe foreign publishers in the West, right? It'll definitely go through a revision process. It'll go through an editing process, and the final product may not be what you originally intended it to be, right? And knowing that, you don't have to dwell too much on the details of your very first manga, right? So you don't aim for perfection. That's also one mistake that a lot of beginners make. So now that leads me to my next question. What do you think is the ideal number of pages for your very first one shot? Just drop your answers, drop your guesses in chat. Okay. One page, Bryn? No. We're talking about a chapter, right? So this is the first chapter, first of your one shot. Just the one chapter of your one shot. Now, how many pages should your one chapter be? All right. Some answered 12, some answered 20 to 30, 5 to 7, 20 to 40, 16 to 20, 16 to 24, 10, 12, usually 20, no more than 40. All right, so the answer is 16 to 20 pages. That's it. Just 16 to 20 pages. Do you guys think that's too short? Is it too long? Is it too short? Let me know. What do you feel about 16 to 20 pages? Seems short, yes. Yeah, pretty much. How do you guys feel about 16 to 20 pages? Let me know. Prefer longer mangas, but that's me. This is I get what you mean, Arrow Shogun, but this isn't about how long the mangas you prefer to read usually are, right? This is about a manga that you make for the first time, right? So if you've never made a manga before, this is what our mentors always say: start small, right? This is what our mentor Nao Yazawa says. You can forget about becoming a pro mangaka if you can't tell a good story in 16 to 20 pages. And our pro manga editor Vivi says, I'd rather have a good short story than 60 pages of confusion, right? So the average number of pages for one chapter in Shonen Jump is actually 20 pages. And in those 20 pages, the mangaka needs to hook their readers and make them want more, right? So do not overwhelm yourself with an impossible task of making a 100 chapter manga on your first try. Don't even try a 50 to 60 page one shot yet, right? Start with a standalone one shot with 16 to 20 pages, right? So now we're going to get into how you're going to make your 16 to 20 page one shot, right? So here are the seven steps. Seven steps. Here are the seven steps to make your manga. Now, step one is ideation and planning, right? Renesaya Sensei says the most challenging part of being a mangaka is coming up with good ideas. And she's right, right? So, our mentors have taught our students this really simple ideation formula. So, this is a formula that you can use to come up with any sort of idea, right? For example, what if subject plus verb? So, you fill in the blanks, fill in this formula with a certain subject, and then you combine it with a verb. Really simple. So here's an example. What if a high school genius discovered a notebook that could kill anyone whose name he wrote in it? Can you guess what manga this is, you guys? Let me know. What do you think this manga is? What do you think this what do you think this idea is? Can you guys guess what manga this is? I think everyone got it right. Everyone answered Death Note. I mean, if you got this wrong, then judging you side eye. Yeah, it's Death Note. Pretty obvious, right? It's Death Note by Tsugumi Oba and Takeshi Obata, right? This is the pretty much the same idea they had when they came up for Death Note, right? What if a high schooler could kill people by just writing their names in a notebook, right? All right, so let's try that one more time. Here's another example. What if a boy who's a martial arts prodigy finds seven power stones? Right. This is I know it's not entirely accurate, but this is early Dragon Ball, all right? So I I, I just said the answer. It's early. I had to explain why it says seven power stones, okay? It's because it's the early idea for Dragon Ball, right? So the answer is Dragon Ball. I'm sorry, you guys. I already answered it for you. It's Dragon Ball. Okay. And just like that, that's how you can switch up the subject and verb to come up with different ideas, since it's so easy to just spitball these types of ideas using this formula, right? You can make a bunch of these. You can write up to like 20 to 30 ideas and basically go through the process of elimination, right? So maybe out of the 10, 20 ideas that you come up with on the spot, maybe choose five that stand out to you, and then you boil it down to the top three until you get to the top one idea that really speaks to you, right? And once you have that idea, your next step is to identify your target audience, right? Something Identifying your target audience, this is something that a lot of beginners who join our program aren't typically aware of, right? Because they don't really think about an audience. Most of them really just want to make manga for themselves you know? And if you want to make, like, if you're, that's fine, right? If you want to make manga for yourself that only you will read, then that's fine. But if you want to make manga that other people will read, that you want to publish and make other people read and actually enjoy, then you got to identify your target audience, right? If you want to be a pro mangaka, you need to learn to create a story that an audience would enjoy, not just you, not your family or your friends, right? While it's fine to make a manga that only you'll enjoy, basically just making a manga for yourself, that won't lead you to a successful manga that other people will love, right? So if you want to make manga, you have to figure out what is it about your story, what is it about your manga that'll allow people to connect to your story on an emotional and also an entertainment level, right? Because so many beginners fall into the trap of creating stories again that are just interesting to them. And while that's fine, again, if you want to make a career out of this and if you want to tell stories that other people will enjoy, then you got to create something that is compelling, engaging, and delivers an experience that other people will enjoy, that other readers will enjoy. Because being a pro isn't just about drawing what you like, it's about crafting something that others will love too, right? So ask yourself, who is this manga for? Who is this story for? What you're making your first manga, then who's going to read this manga, right? So the most common manga demographics are shonen, shoujo, seinen, and josei. Now, if you guys didn't know, shonen is actually a demographic. It's not a genre of manga. People often confuse demographics with genre in manga. Now, a genre, action, adventure, romance, drama, those are manga genres. Whereas shonen, shoujo, seinen, and josei, these are manga demographics because they describe the age um, range of reader groups, right? So shonen is for young boys aged 12 to 18. Shoujo is for young girls aged 12 to 18. And seinen is for men aged 18 and above. And josei are for women aged 18 and above, right? If you want to get published in Shonen Jump, then your target is shonen or young boys. And if you want to feature more mature themes, then your target should be readers over 18. So that means if it's for men over 18, then your audience is seinen. You're making seinen manga. Now, one of the most common beginner mistakes again is that artists don't have a clear audience in mind. So that's often because they don't know who they want to make manga for. And if you don't know who you want to make manga for, that often leads them to thinking, okay, maybe I can just make manga that's universally like enjoyable, right? But what do you call it when you want to draw for everyone? Right, if you try to make a manga, if you try to make a story that as many people as possible will like, what do you call that? A recipe for disaster, right? I mean, trying to make a manga that everyone enjoy or as many people as possible will enjoy, that's a recipe for a disaster. Now, just look at One Piece, right? One Piece is the most popular manga in the world, but it still has haters. A couple of people don't get One Piece. I personally love One Piece, but I know some people who don't. And even if even the most beloved manga, the biggest, most popular manga right now in the world, has people who have never read it yet, or has people who don't like the story, then that means, okay, you can't make a manga that's for everyone. It's impossible. There's no such thing as a universally appealing story that every single person in the world will agree is good. And trying to please everyone would only jeopardize the story you want to tell. So rather than try to aim for everyone, think of your main audience, either shonen, shoujo, josei, seinen, and concentrate on that main audience, right? Because that main audience, they're the main people who are gonna keep reading your manga, right? If anyone outside of your target audience ends up liking your manga, then that's a bonus, right? But they're still not your target audience. You have to focus on your target audience because that's going to be your solid readership base, right? So, next step, the first thing you need to do when you're writing for, once you've identified your audience, once you've gotten your idea, right? The next step is to create a one sentence pitch. Now, this is called a log line, right? So, imagine you went into an anime convention and the special guest is an editor from Shonen Jump. And you go into the elevator and you meet him. It's just the two of you. Now you have 30 seconds to sell them your story, right? This is the purpose. You tell them your log line. This is your pitch, essentially. So if you're a mangaka who wants to, I don't know, publish your manga and you want to work with an editor, you want to work with a publisher, you have to put on like a marketing cap, right? You have an artist cap. This artist cap is for when you're actually making your manga, and this marketing cap is for when, okay, I want to sell my manga, I want to pitch my manga to other people and see if they would want to work with me and if they would want to publish my manga, right? So here's an example of a log line. After an orphaned high school girl discovers her classmates are cursed to transform into animals of the Chinese zodiac, she helps them break the curse while finding her own place in the world. Now, can you guess what manga this log line is for? Drop your guesses in chat. Hmm. Are you guys not familiar with it? We only have a couple of guesses so far. Are you guys not familiar? Fruits Basket? Who else? Any other guesses? Vegetable container. Yeah. Okay, some people have no idea what this manga is. All right. So, for those of you who guessed it right, it is Fruits Basket. Right? It's Fruits Basket. I mean, if you guys don't read shoujo, this is pretty much a shoujo classic. For those of you who don't read shoujo, right? This is a shoujo classic. Now, um, just like that, right? We do this same exercise with our students. Being able to create a one sentence pitch like this has helped them boil all their ideas down into a solid story idea, and it's helped them focus. So once you have your one sentence pitch, the next thing you need to do is here in your logline, do not use character names or terminology that another person will not understand, right? So, Total Honda, we use an orphan girl in the logline. For Dragon Ball, for a logline about Dragon Ball, you don't use Dragon Ball, you use Power Stones, right? Your logline has to be easily understood by anyone who's never heard of your story before. So that means avoid proper nouns, avoid names, avoid mentioning your character's names in your log line. So if your character's high school boy named, let's say, Haru, then don't say Haru does X in your log line. No, say a high school boy does X in your log line. Because that way, descriptors are really, really important when you're coming up with your pitch and your log line. Because editors or anyone else you're pitching to, um they often don't have the attention span or patience to really get into the details of your story. Like they don't really care what the name of your character is, they care about who your character is. And if your character is like an orphan girl or a struggling student or maybe a depressed office worker, that's gonna catch their attention, not their name, right? So when you're making a log line, avoid names, avoid proper nouns. Now, to help you create your log line, we're gonna answer the 5 W's and 1 H questions. Now, I think all of you pretty much know this. It's who, what, when, where, why, and how. Now, who is your main character? What is their goal? When Does this happen? 21st century, maybe the year 3000? Where does this happen? Japan, the US? I don't know, or in maybe America in 2060. I don't know. Why does the MC need to hit their goal, or how does the MC hit their goal? Right. So do not skip any of these questions. As you answer them, you can create an overview of your story. And once you've answered all of these questions, the next thing to do is actually start writing. Right. This is when you get into writing already. So pretty obvious. You create your plot when you start writing, right? This is a written summary of your story to help you visualize the scenes. And one thing that beginners typically do is that they create really long scripts, which is a mistake, right? You shouldn't create really long scripts for your very first one shot because one, long it's literally just a one shot that's 16 to 20 pages that shouldn't require like a 50-page script, right? In fact, for a 16-page one shot, you should really just have a one page plot summary, right? If you're making a 16-page manga one shot, you only need a one page plot summary. If you add the dialogues, then you might end up with 2 pages. But typically, what this is different from mangaka to mangaka, right? Our mentor Yazawa Sensei, this is a sample of Yazawa Sensei's plot here on the left, right? And this is already the entire plot of her one shot, and it's just a single page. So for Yazawa Sensei, for when she's making one shot, she often just does one page plot summaries. Now, there are other mangakas who like to get a bit more into detail, and maybe they end up with, I don't know, like 3 to 5 pages of a plot summary, but never more than the actual number of pages for their final one shot, right? So don't make it too long. Now, to create a compelling plot, you need these 4 elements, right? So you need the ki, sho, ten, ketsu, and this is the traditional Japanese manga storytelling format. This is the introduction, this is the development, the climax, and the resolution. So if you only have 16 pages for your one shot, how many pages are you going to dedicate to each element, right? You could have maybe 4 pages for the key, the intro, 4 pages for the development, the show, 4 pages for the climax, the 10, or maybe 4 pages for the ketsu. Or if you want to dedicate more time to the development, maybe adjust from there, right? So these are the things that you got to plan out ahead of time before you even start drawing, right? And again, there's another step that you need to do before you even start drawing your manga and start paneling, right? You need to figure out the visual design for your whole manga. And the visual design includes character design and optional setting design, right? But we'll mostly be focusing on character design for this session, right? So character design is really important. I think I recall one instance during our one of our sessions with our students, right? When we asked our students to show us their original characters, we didn't give them specific instructions. We just told them, oh, do you have any OCs? Do you have any original characters? Why not like introduce them to us? Why not show us what you have so far? And again, we didn't give them instructions. So when they submitted their OCs, they showed us some really great designs like this. I mean, beautifully drawn characters, really interesting costume design. But during the same session, when Yazawa sensei looked at each of these designs one by one, right, she would always ask, the first thing she would always ask is, why do they look like this? Why were they designed this way? Why is the costume like this? It's always why, right? And for every why that Yazawa sensei would ask about the character design, 9 times out of 10, the student would say, oh, because it looks cool. Oh, I put them in this armor because I thought it looked cool. Oh, I designed them in this sort of windbreaker jacket just because they looked cool, right? And for the most part, that is a valid reason. I mean, draw characters that you'd like to look at, right? I think it's part of that. That should be part of when you're designing your characters, but that shouldn't be the only um basis for designing your characters. Oh, just because they look cool, right? Um, it shouldn't be just all about the visuals. When you're designing characters, you have to draw with intention because their design is a reflection of their personality, right? So there are three levels to character design. There's visual design, features, and essence, right? Now, most people they just focus on the very tip of the pyramid. Number one, visual design. Maybe quite a few people get to level two, their features. Features maybe include like character profile, like snippets of their personality or whatever. Like features include character profiles like this, right? So it's kind of like your character's resume. Usually what you would see in a character profile like this for example, this is a profile of Joseph Joestar. This includes like their height, their family, their hobbies, like date they were born, pretty standard stuff, right? And a lot of beginners only stop at this profile. Like after filling up this sheet, that's enough, right? But it's actually not. It's not enough to just create your character profile and just get the details of their date of birth, their age, their blood type down. Right? That's not enough to create a character that people will want to root for because that's ultimately your goal when you're designing your characters. You need to create memorable characters that people will want to follow through through up until the end of your story, right? So that means you got to think about the essence of your character. Like, who is your character as a person, right? The way they look is important, but what's even more important is the way they are, right? So, quick activity, real quick. All right. So, I want you guys to just think about your OC. Think about one of your OCs, right? What's their name? Share it in the chat or in the comments, right? If you have multiple OCs, just think of one for now. Just choose one for now for this activity, right? So once you choose your one OC, um, drop their names in the chat. What's your OC's name? And who are who are like a quick description of your OC? Like, are they a high schooler, a female high schooler, a male, I don't know, grifter, I don't know. Just let me know in the comments. All right, Eroshogun. Eroshogun's OC is Vanessa Sebring. Cool name. Natasha Gray. Cool name. Rose, Dolor, Sin, Inokage, Rob, Mosquito Killer, Sierra. All right. So now you guys, I want you to imagine your OC in this scenario. Okay. If your OC saw an old lady trying to cross a busy street, what would they do? Let me know in chat. What would your OC do if they saw an old lady trying to cross a busy street? I'm curious. I'm really curious. You don't know this old lady. Again, you just stumble upon them. You just see them out on the street, so you wouldn't know if this old lady is rich or not. You don't know anything about this old lady. So, what would your character do? Era Shogun says their OC would take the old lady in her arms and leap across the street. Nice. So she would help. Your character would help. Okay. Zuma says their character would help her and keep yapping in the process. Nice. Who else? Just Rumi says their character will immediately dash to help her. All right. A lot of people's characters would help, it seems. Oh, we have one. Riding Blazer says their character would continue like nothing happened. All right. Very blase sort of character then. Would ignore her. Okay, we have a couple of people whose characters would just ignore her and would simply just watch. All right. What else? What else? Sea Draw says, okay, this is pretty detailed. Watches from the rooftops, like he always does, on the prowl for typical anomaly activity. An old lady crosses the street, unaware of imminent danger. Imminent danger, goes to help and protect others. Okay, so your character goes to help. All right. Okay, so it's pretty much split between people whose characters would help her and people whose characters would just ignore her. All right. So let's try to apply this scenario to characters from Team 7 from Naruto, right? So Naruto would carry the old lady on her back. Sakura would simply hold the old lady's hand and guide her across the street. And Sasuke would ignore the old lady. And Sasuke does. So, yeah, according to Yazawa sensei, designing characters is literally imagining and creating a person with a history, relationships, goals and motivations, fears and struggles that shape their entire personality. Right? So just think about your favorite anime and manga characters. They mean so much to you, not just because they look cool, but because you love their story. So your original character deserves that same kind of love and attention. Your OC isn't just a drawing on a page or a name in a script. They're the soul of your manga. So if you want readers to care about them, you need to give your characters the same sort of love, depth, and attention as any iconic manga protagonist, right? Just think of Luffy, Naruto, Deku. These characters aren't just cool designs, they have clear goals, strong personality, they have emotional depth and flaws that make them feel real, right? So now that we know how to do the three levels of character design, let's go to setting design real briefly. So again, setting design, this is optional. You could do this if you have extra time. So setting design includes, okay, what does the setting of your manga look like? What does the world look like? Right? So what does your like, for example, what does your character's room look like? If you have a fictional world as your setting, you could also create rough sketches of what that world looks like. And it helps with being consistent with your settings as you create your manga along the way, right? And also when you explain the setting of your world to an editor, they also have a better idea of what your world looks like, right? Now, on to storyboarding. We're pretty much halfway there, you guys. This is storyboarding. Are you guys guilty of skipping storyboarding and drawing pages as you go? Just type I'm guilty in chat. Are you guilty of skipping storyboarding? Have you never made a storyboard before? I mean, let me know. I know a couple of people who don't storyboard. I really do. And they've since started learning how to storyboard. Yeah, because for people who've never storyboarded before, once they actually do start storyboarding, that's when they realize, oh, I could have been doing this years ago. Yeah. All right. We have a couple of people who are guilty. Some people have reverted and learned. Okay, some people have already learned and they're storyboarding now. All right. Nope, I always storyboard. It's one of my favorite parts. Nice. That's cool. Storyboarding in my mind doesn't count. No, it doesn't. I mean, you guys, if you think about it, every single professional mangaka storyboards. So if you don't storyboard, then you're doing something wrong. I mean, if pros do it, then what makes you think that you don't have to do it? Right? Even pros have to do it. Even their editor, if like a pro like Oda with his years of experience, he still storyboards, right? So the whole point of a storyboard is that it's the blueprint for your manga. Like just like how you wouldn't start a house without a solid plan, you shouldn't start drawing your manga without a well thought out storyboard. right? If you try to construct a house without a blueprint, if you try to make a manga without a storyboard, you might include you might forget to include important elements. Like maybe if you're trying to make a house without a blueprint, you might forget to put a door here or a window here, or forget to put in a sturdy foundation over here. I don't know. So the same thing happens when you jump into drawing a manga without storyboarding first, right? If you drop pages without a plan, you might realize too late that, oh, something doesn't work here. I have to redo the pages all over again, right? And a storyboard saves time by helping you catch problems before you start inking, before you start finalizing your pages, right? So the storyboard is really important, especially when you're working with an editor. The storyboard is essential. In fact, like you spend more time on the storyboard than the final pages. For most mangakas, they spend more time on the storyboard than the final pages, because oftentimes this is when you go through a back and forth with your editor over changing some details about your storyboard. You know, maybe the pacing here in this panel is a bit off. Maybe this spread could use less panels, right? Or maybe the reading flow in this spread doesn't work um, after the previous page, you know? So again, the storyboard saves you time. So don't skip, because if you skip, then you're more likely to end with a poorly planned manga. And in Japanese, a storyboard is called a nemu. Nemu. This is the Japanese pronunciation, but it's literally just name in English. If you were to use like English pronunciation, it's a name or a nemu. So there's an art to visual storytelling, and your name will provide you with an overview of the whole flow of your story, right? So imagine watching a movie, you just sit, watch, and everything flows naturally, right? It's the same with manga, right? So let's look at this spread from My Hero Academia. All right. So our eyes enter from the first speech bubble from the top right, and we go down through that panel to the second speech bubble. Then we're directed to the largest panel in the page, the focus panel. This is the misegoma, this really huge panel here. This is the misegoma. And then we go down to the third panel and follow the dialogue through till the end of the page in the bottom left. And the flow is very smooth and straightforward, right? This is what the reading flow pretty much looks like, right? As I described earlier, it's smooth. Your reader's eyes glide through your panels and pages without them even thinking, right? And this is the whole purpose of storyboarding. When you're storyboarding, this is the flow that you need to establish early on, right from the storyboarding phase, right? Because then that'll make drawing your scenes and finalizing your scenes so much easier, right? So here's an example of a rough manga pages, right? That really didn't have storyboards for the most part. So, I want you guys to look through these pages real quick and maybe point out what you feel like could be improved with this manga, right? How do we fix this manga? Let me know. If you have a couple of suggestions in chat, maybe a couple of observations on what could be improved, we'll just drop them in chat, right? But pretty much this is how you can improve this manga even further, right? There's already lots of headshots, lots of boss shots, lots of similar angles and perspectives, also redundant paneling. There's a lot of repetitive square panels, and it's also heavily reliant on dialogue to drive the story. I mean, you don't even have to look at the characters, you just have to read the dialogue because the characters aren't really offering much in terms of visual cues. So and that's in large part because we're really just looking at the characters' faces and their reactions. We're not really learning much from their body language or or like their expressions for the most part, right? So if you could diversify the shots, like maybe put in more wide shots, more long shots, maybe different angles for a bit to really emphasize like the reactions of some of these characters, right? Like if a character would react negatively, maybe an ant, like a bird, not a bird's eye view, but I think they call it a worm's eye view. Yeah, like from the bottom, an angled shot of the character from the chin up, actually could help deliver the negative feeling even more effectively, right? So we actually have a whole video. That's only one example. We have a whole video on how you could switch up the angles and shots of your panels to make your scenes even more dynamic and more cinematic, right? So you can guys can check out our video on like manga cinematic techniques later, maybe after the session, right? So the whole point of storyboarding as well is to make sure that you're showing and not telling, right? Show don't tell is something that all of our mentors repeatedly remind our students, right? You got to let your art speak for itself. Let your scenes speak for themselves, right? When you watch a movie, there are different scenes: long shots, mid shots, close up shots, fight scenes, emotional scenes, right? And it's the same with manga. So when you're making manga, you got to think of yourself as a director for your manga. And here's an example, okay? So check out these two different versions of the same scene with the same characters. And here's an example on the left. The one on the left is a single panel with all the dialogues and characters in one single panel. It's a couple, basically, or almost a couple, right? So the guy says, "Want to go home together today?" And the girl says, "Sure." And all of this is done in one single panel. But this could be improved even further for a more cinematic feel, for a more dramatic effect, right? So let's shift to the example on the right. So it's a full page now. Instead of one single panel, it's a full page. And from the first panel, we get a shot of a guy in centered. It's centered on the guy, and there are two speech bubbles on either side of the guy. The speech bubble on the right says, "Wanna go home?" And then it cuts off to the next speech bubble, "Together," you know. So it ups the stakes a bit. There's a bit of tension there because as you read the first speech bubble, you don't know what he's gonna say next. So if you want to know what he says next, you have to go to the next speech bubble, right? So it enhances the tension in that sense. And in the first example, the girl just says "sure" right after he says it. But in the second example, we see a reaction shot of the girl's reaction first. We see a shot of her blushing first before we get a wide shot of both of them in a park somewhere all alone. And finally, the girl says yes, right? So it's more cinematic than the first example. It's more cinematic, it's more dramatic, and you feel a bit more invested this way, right? So this is the point of storyboarding is you how you can elevate your scenes even more to improve the pacing, to improve the tension, to make your scenes even more dynamic, right? So this is one of the many ways you could do it. Now, for when you're storyboarding, you could also start with drawing out the thumbnails for all your pages and evaluate. Now, thumbnails are part of the storyboarding process. Now, thumbnails, these are smaller versions of your storyboard that are literally just chicken scratch for the most part, right? So you thumbnails are snapshots of your actual storyboard because thumbnails are laid out as two-page spreads. So thumbnails are to lay out the number of panels in every spread of your one shot, right? So the point of this is to evaluate the variety of your scenes, to also evaluate the reading flow as well of your scenes if they connect well from spread to spread, right? And you ask yourself as you're doing your thumbnails, like, are there redundant scenes or are there weird flows? And maybe can you combine scenes to make this part of the story even tighter, right? So being able to see the balance and flow between spreads like this can help give you an overview of all of your scenes, right? So how does it look as a spread, right? Remember, when you have a manga in your hand, you're reading 2 pages at a time. So uh when you're planning out your manga, you have to think about the story flow in this sense. So Your first panel on the right page is your entry point, and it's the opening scene from your previous page. And the last panel on the left is your exit point, and readers have to feel like they want to flip the page to continue to read more. So here, we have an example from our student Raven over here. So on the left, this is a first draft of her spread. And she started off with this, and this is what she sent to our mentors. The one on the left is what she sent to our mentors. And after going through a couple of rounds of revisions with her mentors, this is her final storyboard here on the right. It ended up looking like this after getting feedback. So from 13 panels from her initial storyboard, she brought it down to just 7 panels for the entire spread, right? Because every panel matters and everything has to be intentional, right? You don't like less is more is pretty much the way to go with manga. Having too many panels in a page could risk overwhelming your reader and could also risk confusion because if you have too many panels then the flow is risks going all over the place. The more panels you have, the more movement the reader's eyes have to go through just to be able to read your panel, just to be able to read your manga, right? So beginners often want to include so much info in their manga, but the thing about Japanese manga again is less is more. But here's another example from our student Courtney, right, where it's pretty much the opposite. So this is the first storyboard from Courtney. This is just a spread from her one shot, right? And after going through revisions with our mentor actually suggested that Courtney include these 2 panels here on either side of the huge action scene on the center, right? Our mentor Yazawa Sensei actually suggested that Courtney added these reaction shots to really emphasize the impact of the scene a bit more because this scene is actually the climax of her one shot, right? It's the huge defeat of the monster that her 2 characters are fighting against, right? And to make it even more impactful, Yazawa Sensei suggested that Courtney added these reaction shots. So there's already a big difference from her first storyboard to her final storyboard because the one on the right, this is her final storyboard, and this is what she ended up inking. So remember, after looking at these storyboards from our students, right? Remember, don't be scared to edit, right? Your first draft will always need edits. And it's better to make your edits now than later because it'll be even harder to edit beyond the storyboarding phase. All right. So if you want to learn even more about storyboarding, I really just gave you a really quick overview of storyboarding. But if you want to learn more about storyboarding and how to improve your storyboarding skills, we also have a couple of videos on that, which you can check out on our channel. Just you don't have to scroll too far. All right. Now, the next step is pencil sketches, right? So when you're making manga, you want to have a B4 sized manuscript paper, and this will be printed in B5, right? If you've ever seen a mangaka make their manga behind the scenes, you'll find that the pages for the manga that they make are often pretty big, right? They draw with big pages so that when it gets printed, it actually gets compressed and sized down, right? So this is what a typical manga manuscript looks like here on screen. You can see these margins, you can see these rulers here on the side, right? Do not draw anything beyond these margins, right? These are your bleed lines, and anything beyond that is going to be cut out. So this image here, this example here on screen is page on the right. This is a right page, and it's positioned on the right of a spread. So the margin on the left is thicker because this is where the spine of the manga is for when it gets printed, right? So this is the spine. So if you draw anything within this area, even if it is within the margin, it will be hard to see because it'll get hidden within the spine, right? So you can buy manga manuscript paper with these guidelines, or you can just get the paper size on your digital program like Clip Studio. Now, Clip Studio has a feature where you can find different manga templates for different publishers. And we go more into detail about that in our program. Actually, I don't think we don't even have a video about manga guidelines yet or manuscript paper yet, because it's really only something that we talk about in our program. So if you use Clip Studio Paint, there's actually a manga template there where you can find, um, I believe, a Shueisha template. There's also a Kodansha template in Clip Studio. It's like built in Clip Studio. So if you wanna start layouting your final manga pages using um an actual manga template, right? You can use Clip Studio. Clip Studio is really useful like that. And then next step is inking. All right. Oh, see, Jaws, I'm so sorry you keep getting ads. I'm so sorry. We have zero control over ads. I'm so sorry about that. But yeah, I hope you're still able to follow along. Sorry about that. But yeah, next step is inking, right? So once you're done with your pencil sketches for your manuscript, next step is to ink the line art, the panel lines, the speech bubbles, the bleed lines, and the beta. Now, beta, these are pure black areas, like here. Like if you look at this character's beanie and this character's hair and the sound effects, these are beta areas. So these are areas that you literally just fill in with black, right? And when you're inking, typically what pro mangakas do is they ink using Clip Studio. They ink digitally. I do know mangakas who draw their storyboards traditionally, like they sketch it out on paper and then they scan it and they polish it digitally. So that's where they do the inking. The standard program that most mangakas use, the standard program that our mentors use, in fact, is Clip Studio Paint, right? But if you're the type of person who wants to ink traditionally, a lot of it's still a thing. A lot of old school mangakas still ink traditionally, so they use dip pens like this. These are some examples of kinds of dip pens here on the left. But avoid using fine liners like this on the right, right? Because they're a bit more difficult to use for beginners. And aside from dip pens, traditional artists also use Fuda brush pens. Fuda brush pens, these are actual brush pens used to fill in the beta areas or the pure black areas for your manga scenes. And artists also use white ink. Now, white ink, this is what artists use to clean up their mistakes. If you look at Junji Ito's, I think a good example is this is like Junji Ito's like early storyboards, early manuscripts. You can find, if you look closely enough, you can find parts of his manuscript are actually inked out in white because that's where he made mistakes. So yeah, if you're drawing traditionally, white ink will really save your life. And then we have the final step, which is finishing. All right. So after inking, this is when you add screen tones and shading. Okay. So screen tones are basically made of tiny dots that create gray shading, and they come in different patterns and designs, and you can apply them digitally or traditionally. And it's very hard to find screen tones in Japan. If you're adding your screen tones traditionally, that's going to be a bit difficult because screen tones are pretty expensive and they add up, right? If you keep spending so much money on screen tones, then it's going to add up. And that's why a lot of pro mangakas, most pro mangakas don't draw traditionally or add their screen tones traditionally because it's way more expensive than if you were to draw digitally, right? And using screen tones really adds depth. It adds more depth and helps create the mood of your scene, like for like here, right? So these sort of sparkly effects, these are screen tones. This effect in the character's hair, this is a screen tone. Like this gradient, this is a screen tone, right? Now, I think we're pretty much over. We're done. That's the 7 step process on how to make your manga. So if you want to learn more about shading, you could also check out our videos on the channel about manga shading after this session, maybe. And yeah, again, those are the 7 steps to creating your manga. Recounting, it's ideation and planning, writing, visual design, storyboarding, pencil sketches, inking, Um, yeah, inking, finishing, and shading. All right. So real quick, sorry about that, you guys. I put them in timeout. All right. Sorry about that, you guys. All right. So going back, right? So we've already gone through the 7 step roadmap that every beginner, every pro mangaka uses to make their manga, right? So we've already broken down this process. And now I want to remind you guys, right? If you're going to go through this process, just remember you're not a pro, not yet, at least. So don't expect or pressure yourself to go through this whole process in just 1 week or even 1 month. All right. So if you're a beginner and you're learning about this whole process and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to start making my manga and I'm going to follow this process, then don't expect to master the process in just a week or in just a month, right? That's impossible. Okay. So, according to Yazawa sensei, creating a proper one shot is 10 times more stressful than just drawing characters, especially when you start working with an editor. All right. So, if you want to go pro, aim to create at least one finished one shot per year. If you want to make manga seriously, if you want to get to a point where you can publish with a publisher and work with an editor, then aim to create at least one finished one shot per year. All right. And creating your own manga takes time, it takes effort, it takes commitment, right? And I want to ask you guys, you have to deal with so much mental anguish, always asking yourself, am I good enough? Am I doing it right? Is it worth it? Like, going back to what we said about your struggles with wanting to make manga, right? I know a lot of you guys ask yourselves, am I good enough? Am I doing it right? Is it worth it? So, since we already established that you're eager to learn and you believe you can make manga, now my question for you is, would you rather make manga by yourself or would you rather have a proven path to success and get the right help that you need, right? Because Courtney also didn't have manga making experience, but now she's finished her one shot and joined the wordless manga competition. Our student Courtney, when she first started, she was just self learning. She'd never made a manga before, but when she finally joined us, she managed to finish her manga in just a couple of months and actually submitted to a competition, right? Just look at her progress over a span of a couple of months, right? Or maybe our student Garrett. Now, before joining us, Garrett, again, never made manga before, but now he's already finished storyboarding for his one shot and he's already made multiple short mangas since then. He's made yonkomas, he's made 2-page mangas, 4-page mangas, right? Or you have our student Answer. When Answer joined, he wasn't happy with where his art was. Like, most of this here on screen, these are his earlier works, right? He never made manga, he'd only ever drawn characters. And finally, here, this is his latest one shot, right? After just a couple of months, he went from never making manga, having no experience drawing manga, to creating manga like this, right? It's so much improved, much more dynamic. His scenes, his paneling have improved so much. And now he's already finished his first one shot and submitted it to the silent manga edition, right? And if you want to learn about more about Amser, you can check out our interview with him here on screen. Here's a snippet here on the upper left. You can check out the replay in our lives tab if you want to learn more about Amser and more about our previous students as well, because we have a ton of interviews with our students on the channel, which you can check out after this. So if you want to be like our students and if you want a proven path to success and get the right help to actually make progress, right? We invite you to apply to our online one shot manga drawing program. And again, if you want to get guidance and mentorship our students have had exclusive access to, then join the program, because our students have exclusive access to pro Japanese mangakas Naoyazawa and Renasaya, who've had decades of experience in the Japanese manga industry. And they also have access to pro webtoon artist Steph Pastrano, And they have access to an actual manga editor, you guys, with over 10 years of experience working with publishers like Kadokawa and Koa Mix, and working with editorial teams for titles like Record of Ragnarok and Unsung Cinderella, right? So our students have access to them. So are you guys excited to work with these amazing mentors? Because we're not just taking in anyone, because the better the fit, the better the results. And we want to work with aspiring mangakas who are ready to commit and challenge themselves to be the best they can be. And if you do manage to join the program and you get accepted, then you get the chance, the opportunity to get a marketing boost on your manga, because we will collect our students' best works and promote them on our platform so you can get more exposure. And also, we have a manga anthology that we're cooking up. Right, we're currently creating, in the process of producing our very first Learn to Draw manga anthology, where it's literally just a magazine compilation of our students' mangas. And if you want, it's just a way for us to give back to our students and give back to our community as well, because we want to share just how far our students have come from, most of them coming from backgrounds where they never made manga before, zero experience backgrounds, basically. Right. So we're cooking up that anthology and it's going to be out by early next year for sure. And we're going to be announcing it pretty soon. So you still have time to join. If you want to join the anthology, then come apply to the program. Right. And once you do join the program, our most committed and high performing students will get the opportunity to pitch to publishers in Japan, right? So we're going to be sending our best students to Japan on an all expense paid trip to attend Comitia, which is a top indie manga convention where you can get to pitch your manga directly to Japanese publishers and editors. And don't worry, we know Japanese, so we are going to translate your work. We are going to help translate your work if you do manage to get the opportunity to go to Japan, right? So if you want in, here's how the process works. Now, this program is for you if you are 18 years old and can comfortably write and speak in English. If you're above 18 years old, all right, at least 18 years old. And this is for you if you're a beginner mangaka who feels lost and stuck and finally wants to feel confident putting your manga on paper and sharing your stories with the world. And this is for you if you want the fastest path to gain the right skills to self publish, join manga contests, or even pitch to publishers. And this is for you if you want mentorship from pro Japanese mangakas and a pro manga editor, and you want to join a community of fellow mangakas who are in this journey with you together. All right. So if this sounds like you, I invite you to book a free manga consultation call with us today. And again, we will only accept serious applicants. So this is it. This is it, you guys. This is the moment. I mean, if you're still here after that really long session, and that means, okay, you want to learn more, you want to move beyond just this session, and you actually want to take action, right? So now the ball's in your court. Will you take this opportunity to empower yourself and actually learn from professionals, right? You don't want to stay stuck in the exact same situation you came to the session with. You're ready to make this commitment to your art, and you're ready to get the same results as our students, or even better results as our students, right? And you said you deserve this opportunity and you want guidance and mentorship, right? So the ball is your court. It is in your court. So will you decide to take action tonight, or will you stay stuck in the exact same situation for the next month, year, or maybe decade, right? If you don't want to stay stuck, if you want to get help, right, making your manga, then apply now, right? All you have to do to transform your journey tonight is to click the link in the pinned comment section. All right, so I am going to be sending the link here in the chat. If you guys want to apply, you can apply through the link here in chat, right? I already pinned it in chat. And in the meantime, you guys, I will be accepting questions. I'll be opening the floor to questions, maybe one or two questions. You guys, if you have any questions about the manga making process, or if you have any questions about the program, now's the time to ask. All right. So, yeah. I'm not 18, but my mom will pay for everything. Now, here's the thing, okay? We do not accept applicants who are minors and below 18 because the program requires that you are able to accept criticism, right? And working with minors is risky because minors are less susceptible or less open to criticism in our experience, right? And like our, our mentors can get harsh with the criticism, but that's pretty much the way it is in the manga industry. Like if you can't accept harsh critique and if you can't accept feedback, then the program isn't for you. You're not meant to be in the program, right? So we only accept people who are 18 years old and above because they have a more mature mindset, they're more open to feedback, that sort of thing. What can anyone can apply? Yeah. If I just have ideas that I want to bring to life as a form of a manga, how will that process be from the start? So writing, if you want to join the program, anyone with different levels, everyone at different levels can join the program. Like I said, anyone who's had zero experience making manga or zero experience drawing, they can join the program and we start them off with the basics. But if you've had experience drawing and you just want to learn how to make manga and improve your visual storytelling and maybe start right off from the storyboarding stage, we have that as well. So the program is for people with different levels of experience, right? So yeah, again, I think I already showed you that one of our students before joining our program had already made manga before when they joined our program, but they joined our program just to improve their manga making skills even further, which is definitely possible if you want to join the program. Bam, do they accept partners in the program? What do you mean by partners, Bam? Could you elaborate? Sai says, hello, this is Sahib. I'm taking a break from studying and wanted to reach out and share my gratitude for you guys on inspiring me to become a mangaka. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sahib. I'm so glad that we're able to help. The delinquents, is it free? No, the program is not free. It is a paid program. If you want to learn more about the program, you can check out our website. Bam sounds like an artist and a writer telling one story. Yes, you can partner with someone to create your manga. Death Note, if you guys aren't familiar, was made by two people, a writer and a mangaka duo. That's Sugumi Oba and Takeshi Obata. Right. So yeah, it's entirely possible to work with a writer or maybe work with a illustrator for your manga. And it's not, and if you want to join the program, we can talk about it. I think if you want, if you and your partner want to join the program, we can definitely talk about it. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, you guys? If not, I'm going to be closing the floor to questions in three, two, one. All right. So that's it for questions today, you guys. And I want to end this session with a little food for thought, right? So what will you be tomorrow if you start today, right? Our students joined our program months ago and now they've already made significant improvements in their art and storytelling skills, and that could be you. You can do it too if you just take the leap and sign up to our one shot manga drawing program today. All right, so if you have time after the session, you can check out our latest upload on the channel. It's all about how you can make your manga fails into wins. So if you're the type of person who's just been failing at making manga, or you've been trying to make manga and just never gone anywhere, then maybe our latest upload can inspire you to take that next step, right? So yeah, if you have any more questions about the program, you can leave them in the chat or leave them in the comments after we end today's session. But that's it. That's all the time we have for today, you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And please, the next live stream you can check out is going to be next Sunday at 1 p.m. CET, right? So we're going to be interviewing our student Hang, who is a 3D artist and a biochemist who finished their first manga in just 4 months. So if you want to learn more about our student, then you can check out our interview with them next Sunday. All right. So yeah, I'll see you guys at the next live stream. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and I'll see you guys next time. All right. Have a great day, you guys.